I have a secret. I had the mother of all grudges. That's embarrassing. But it's like it just happened and it was out of control. And yeah, divorce is like produces grudges. Like I think the worst I had, there was like a scale of grudges. Some were really bad, and then there was a whole lot of like lower scale ones, but I had a lot of grudges. And um it was my actually my mom pointed them out. She was like, "Christina, you have a problem." I'm like, "Okay, mom." But in the end, I think what got me past the like wanting to go beyond grudges and like overcome them was simply the fact that I didn't want the other person to win. And what I mean by winning is that the grudges, like just the thought of the betrayal of or whatever was the cause of my grudge, even though it was completely valid, that grudge, just would make my blood boil. The thought, I would randomly think throughout the day of the betrayal. And then my blood would boil. I would get upset. I would be in a bad mood. I would like miss out on things. And yeah, that's definitely what caused me to identify the grudges in my life and have the desire to move past them. Not because I'm some like noble person, but because I didn't want them to win. So the thought of, I guess that's how I looked at it, was by me getting my undies in a bundle over the thought of them, to me, that meant that they were winning, and I was not going to let that happen. So actually, you'd think that my ex-husband would get like the granddaddy prize for the grudges on the scale. And of course, like technically he does, but because we have kids together, like I didn't even hold a grudge from the beginning because it was just like, well, I made my bed, I'm gonna lay in it for the sake of my children. Like I can't go through their childhood till they turn 18 with a grudge. So like that, it just wasn't feasible. I couldn't do it. Um, and I think another thing that really um, hit home was my dear cousin. Um, her parents were divorced when they were little, so I think that she was maybe like 4 when they got divorced, so about the age that my kids were when I got divorced. And her mom and dad were terrible to each other. Like the mom would send the kids over to the dad's house with really shoddy clothes and like just ridiculous stuff. Like you know that they're not wearing that at when they go home to their parents' house because their mom was like a beautiful person and well dressed. Like no way would she let her kids go around dressed like that. But I feel like they wouldn't even sell these clothes at Goodwill. Like I don't know where she found them, if she like weathered them or what she did. But I just remember looking at it and being like, wow, the swimsuits were see through, and like the pants didn't fit. They come up way above their ankles, and just super cute kids. But whenever they went to their dad's house, they were just terribly dressed, and it was just really clear that that was a message from the mom, like, I have a grudge against your dad, so I'm going to send you to his house with terrible clothes. And that was probably the least of the problems. Like, um, they, though there were 3 girls, and the oldest girl was kind of responsible for relaying messages back and forth between the mom and the dad. So it would be like, Dad, mom says that you need to pay for half my braces because that's what the court order says. So could you send me home with the check? And then the dad would get mad and say bad things about the mom. And I mean, it was just a constant battle for these kids, like feeling in between mom and a dad. I mean, the grudge was so very apparent, and the kids were just right in the middle of it, and it was not healthy. I mean, these girls, will grow up to be fine, but they would have definitely be a lot better off if they wouldn't have to have dealt with that mess of a grudge and have been put in the middle of that. So I think I rem, that was really touched. I remembered that so closely. It was close to my heart from seeing my cousin, that happened to my cousins. So I was like, I do not want my kids to deal with that. So that experience just made it very clear to me right from the beginning, day one, that I can't carry a grudge against their dad because it would harm my kids. Like, they might grow up to have like daddy issues or distrust men, or worse, I think that they, because kids naturally want to um, like protect their parents regardless of who's at fault, they they may have looked at me with like anger or resentment because I threw their dad under the bus. So just wasn't an option. So actually, the person that I struggled most with the grudge was my ex best friend. I call her the rotten Barbie twin. Not very nice. You can tell she's still not my favorite person in the world. But she had betrayed me, working like in cahoots with my husband behind my back during the divorce process. She actually like testified in court against me. Seriously, if I would have met her in a dark alleyway, like shit would have gone down. Like I was so upset with her, and just the thought of her made my blood boil. And but I recognized that she was winning. So I had to get past it. Like, we're still not friends to this day. Like, I blocked her on all of my social media and phone and everything. And maybe that's a little bit childish, but at the time I needed to do it, and it's quite convenient now because I don't have to deal with it. But that um, that relationship I knew was like severed beyond repair. So there wasn't any like making things right. Like I no longer wanted to be her friend ever. So for that particular grudge, it was just easier to close the door and move beyond. And it's still hard because like she comes up all the time. Like my ex, like for some strange reason, even though she was my friend, like he goes to visit her like a couple times a year with my kids. So like her name is always brought up, and like, oh, we stayed at Kathy's house, and it's like, oh, um, not my favorite thing, but I keep my mouth shut. But so I would say that was like the hardest grudge that I've had to deal with. But it just got to the point where like it was really hurting me more than like any grudge would hurt her. Like she didn't see me struggling with how much she hurt me or like her betrayal. It was just me throwing a pity party and getting like my undies in a bundle over it in silence by myself. Like that's not helping me or my kids, and it was really just harming me. So I just decided to move on, and dealt with that by one, like just eliminating that friendship and just stopping communication, and really trying hard to make new friends. At first I was like, I never want to have friends again, but then it's like, okay, well that doesn't sound very um, logical. So I, worked on making new friends, and so, and just not letting that get to me anymore, mostly because I didn't want her to win. Um, so what I did, I had read this it was like a suggestion, I think, in one of the books that I've read. It was list out your grudges and make 3 columns. So you write in one column the name of the person who you have a grudge against, and then in the middle column write what the grudge is for. So like for my ex, the grudge was like, okay, I'm gonna omit that. I'm not gonna say what the grudge is for. You can just imagine. And then in the last column, write the intensity. So like for someone who really betrayed you, really hurt you, you would rate it like a 10 or a 9. And then the people, like I had lots of like kind of bottom feeder grudges, like, oh man, you hurt my feelings, or I feel like you betrayed me. So I would write their name, what they did, and then the intensity. Like, I remember one of the lower grudges for me was my aunt who wouldn't testify for me in court. Like, to me, I took that as a sign of betrayal, or like, why, you don't want to stand up for me or what? And but I rated her lower because, I mean, I think I was just really being really sensitive at the time. The truth was, one, she didn't want to take a day off of work to go testify in court, which is totally understandable because who wants to testify in divorce court in between, you know, like that's like stepping into like rapid fire. Doesn't make sense. So I, you know, with some time, like I see that some of those grudges really like weren't valid. But at the time, like it's just better to get them all on paper. So I wrote them all out, and then you start, once you get all of your grudges listed out, then you can start crossing them off. And the way you're going to cross them off is that the anything that's not rated like above a 6 or something, cross them off. Like, it's just not worth it. Like, for my aunt, it was definitely not worth like losing that relationship over just because she wouldn't testify for me. Like, she had some other reasons, and really in the end it wasn't that important. I was just like a little sensitive at the time and hurt, but not worth carrying the grudge. So I was able to like cross all of these minor grudges off the bottom of the list and not be dealt with anymore. I just thought, when I saw her, for example, and like the feelings of grudges maybe bubbled up at first, I just was able to say, you know what, I've already dealt with that. I already decided like it wasn't worth me getting my undies in a bundle. So it was kind of strange. Like, I was able to just move past some of those smaller ones. For the bigger grudges, like the ones that rated like 9 and 10, tougher. Like, obviously for my ex-husband, couldn't cross him off the list because I needed to have a co-parent relationship with him, and it needed to be very healthy for the sake of my children. So again, I didn't really do it for his sake or for my sake. That one I did it for my kids. But the rotten Barbie twin, she didn't make the cut. So I crossed her off. So you're going to deal with all the different grudges in a different way, but it's really important to like name them out, recognize which ones are like not worth keeping and which ones you can get rid of. And for me, it really helped just like kind of analyzing the grudges like that in more of a logical way, and then I was able to move past them. So definitely, you know, I didn't do it perfectly. Obviously, I still have some hard feelings, but you get the idea. So just keep your chin up because you are an overcomer. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and sign up for my newsletter. It's divorceowl.com/opt-in.